I will kick off. This is the Downer Construction Sector Productivity Panel or session, or stream. So firstly, I would like to thank the team at Downer for their thought leadership in this sector. And I don't know if you saw it, but a week or so ago, Steve Killeen, the CEO of Downer, had an article in the Herald which was really on exactly on this topic. So I'm delighted to kick off the stream by introducing Adrienne Young-Cooper, Chair of Housing New Zealand. Adrienne is heavily involved with infrastructure, with other director roles with Queenstown Airport, Sea-Link and NZTA. And if you wondered how she got there, I mean, prior to this, she'd established her own town planning and public policy consultancy business. So we're very fortunate to have Adrienne with us this morning. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Adrienne. Thank you.
Good morning. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi nui. Hei pukanga wai, hei nohanga tangata, hei nohanga tangata, hei putanga kōrero. Building lives and communities by Housing New Zealanders. These words are at the heart of what Housing New Zealand is all about, and it's our guiding vision. Thank you to Stephen Selwood and Infrastructure New Zealand for the opportunity to speak about the major role Housing New Zealand and HLC, our urban development company, are playing in boosting innovation, productivity and quality in the urban development and construction sector, and setting up a pipeline of large-scale urban development and home building activity. I've been the chair of the board of Housing New Zealand since 2016, after a few years as deputy chair, and I also sit on the board of the New Zealand Transport Agency. And so finally my career in integrating infrastructure investment with quality urban development has full flight under the urban growth agenda of this government. And the Prime Minister spoke this morning about the need for certainty in Crown investment, and Housing New Zealand certainly has certainty, and we have an investment program. I'd like to acknowledge the steadfast, diligent work over several years by chief executives and the executive teams of Housing New Zealand and HLC in developing the large-scale urban development and home building program we are now well embarked on, and it's great to see a number of Housing New Zealand people here at this presentation, and if there are any difficult questions, I'll be directing them to that table over there. Housing New Zealand has clear ministerial and statutory mandates. Number one, house New Zealand's most vulnerable citizens in warm, dry state homes with compassion. And number two, use our assets and resources to ramp up a major urban land development and home building program for new state and affordable and other housing, focusing first on Auckland, then the rest of New Zealand. But as anyone in business knows, mandate and clear shareholder expectations and actual delivery are two different things. No one can live in a promise, and no one can live in a mandate. They live in a home. And no one who works at Housing New Zealand wakes up in the morning wondering what is the purpose of their job. I want to underline that to support homes delivered on the ground, the importance of fit-for-purpose machinery of government and good business disciplines, and these include shareholder and ministerial mandate, approved investment strategies and plans, good investment disciplines, procurement practices, organisational capacity, and most importantly, purposeful engagement with the private sector who actually deliver all of our capital investment program. All that is now in place, and Housing New Zealand has a $13 billion pipeline of residential projects and land development projects over the next 10 years, redeveloping state housing suburbs and other land for state housing, and developing build-ready land for affordable housing and market housing. The Housing New Zealand Planning and Investment System received an investor confidence rating of AA, the highest rating of all government agencies, from the New Zealand Treasury when independently reviewed in 2016. A core value of Housing New Zealand is to embrace learning, and so of course the system remains in constant and rapid improvement as our investment program is ramped up. Housing New Zealand humbly plays an important role in the lives of our 180,000 public housing tenants and their families by providing stability of housing, and will continue to do that. Housing New Zealand is this country's biggest landlord. Our portfolio of some 63,000 properties is valued at more than $26 billion, making it one of the Crown's largest trading agencies. We are actively upgrading, maintaining and improving our existing properties. Over the past 2 years, we've invested close to $1 billion, both capital and maintenance spend, on our existing homes to ensure they're fit for purpose. We'll spend around $400 million per annum on an ongoing basis to ensure our existing homes remain fit for purpose. Of note, 5 years ago, we were spending about $200 million per annum, and we were getting further and further behind in our maintenance. That has now been largely addressed. Now, turning to our state housing investment program, we have ambitious targets set for us by the government to renew and expand state housing stock, and in doing this with our private sector partners, we will be the leading residential construction organisation in the country. Why are we doing this? Well, it's simple. More than 25% of our homes are over 60 years old. 60% of our stock is at the end of its economic life over the next 20 years and will be renewed. And in some cases, we will carry out a capital retrofit of existing homes to 21st century standards of thermal performance and amenity. But in many cases, the house and its low density land utilisation mean the land is ripe for redevelopment at higher densities. And the social housing register of people in serious housing need for state houses and other public housing sits at over 8,000 as at June this year, and they are qualified applicants. The demographics of public housing demand have been slowly changing over the last 20 years, with a move away from low-income working families to single-person households at one end of the spectrum and large families at the other. The typical 2 or 3 bedroom state house, which is 77% of our portfolio on a large section, is unsuitable for many of these households. Our asset management strategy and long-term investment program reflect the need to renew state housing stock and to develop much different typologies. Increasingly, we are building, for example, apartments and terrace houses, especially in Auckland, where the planning regime is relevant to 21st century housing needs. So let me give you our build targets for New Zealand just for the next 4 years. These numbers include replacement and additional state homes. The net additional state homes are supported by the government's 2018 budget appropriation to support the additional rent that these additional homes will require, but the capital needed to both replace and add to our state housing stock is funded directly by the Housing New Zealand balance sheet and a program of borrowing on the wholesale debt market. So for the year ended June 2019, we're going to be building 1,545 homes, a net additional 1,120. For the year ended June 2020, we're going to build 1,786 new state homes, a net additional 1,120. And the net additional is because we have to demolish some homes to build the new ones. For year ended June 2021, we'll be building 1,782 new state homes, a net additional 1,120. And for the year ended June 2022, 1,787 state homes, a net additional 1,120. This is a total of nearly 7,000 new state homes, about half of which will be built in Auckland, with the remainder in Wellington, Christchurch and regional cities of New Zealand. And looking forward, we plan to be building about 2,000 state homes every year for the next 20 years. Including our capital retrofit, capital maintenance and buy-in programs, this represents an investment of well over $1 billion every year for the foreseeable future in renewing and expanding state housing stock. This level of investment is a major ramp up for Housing New Zealand and HLC and drives new ways of working with private sector partners. Earlier I mentioned our AA credit investor confidence rating. This was no accident and reflects the investment and planning disciplines that we've developed over the past 4 years, from a New Zealand-wide asset management strategy, a 30-year long-term investment plan, to 10-year regional investment programs which are under development, and the actual investment business cases which are prepared in accordance with our detailed housing investment model. Ministerial approval and consultation processes are well embedded, efficient and timely. We have borrowed from the New Zealand Transport Agency decision-making architecture, an acknowledged government agency leader in confidently delivering a pipeline of construction-ready projects. The decision-making on large-scale suburban regeneration projects being delivered by HLC is similarly well-defined, with ministerial consultation processes, commissioning processes from HNZ, and full delegated decision-making and accountability on those projects being given to the HLC board. I want to talk a little bit about ministerial mandates. While Housing New Zealand is at law an arm's length Crown entity, we are fundamentally an agent of core government social policy. We have broad mandates through legislation to act in accordance with high-level social objectives notified to us by the Minister of Housing and Urban Development. We also receive clear guidance from our responsible minister annually through a letter of expectation. Consultation thresholds are well established, and we consult the minister before significant capital investment is made. In addition, we actually consult on large-scale master plan and program business cases for regeneration developments, and the alignment of Housing New Zealand and HLC to government priorities is fundamental to our success. The first part of building, as many of you would know, is actually having land. Building at scale requires build-ready land, and this is largely the responsibility of HLC, our specialist urban development company. HLC has proven its ability to not only master plan based on sound urban design, placemaking and commercial return, but also to deliver major urban and community infrastructure and civil works for greenfield communities and now also within existing urban areas. By removing most of the land supply and land development risk from residential developers, HLC has been able to partner with the private sector in delivering significant innovation in lower cost residential typologies and construction methods for the private market. Efficiency in urban development requires end-to-end thinking, including land development. The scale of the Auckland housing program has meant that HLC is right now in a process of industry engagement to develop an alliance model for the land development of thousands of home sites, both estate housing and privately owned homes throughout Auckland. And this Civils Alliance will be well in excess of $1 billion over 10 years. Turning back to the state housing program, residential construction in New Zealand remains largely a bespoke and small-scale industry, but change is well underway. Housing New Zealand is playing its part and has been developing standardised house design to drive simple consenting processes and at-scale contracting for materials and construction services. We have standardised architect-led designs for standalone, duplex, row or terrace housing from 2 to 6 bedrooms that can be matched with build-ready land provided by HLC. Typology, roof profiles, cladding and orientation provide variety. We're targeting Homestar 6 rating, well in excess of the building code. Designs have been tested with builder partners and quantity surveyors to reduce time to build and cost to build, and we'll be seeking MB multi-proof consenting for the standardised designs. We have started rolling out standardised homes and will closely monitor the actual delivery times, costs, and tenant satisfaction to drive a process of continuous improvement. And now turning to that important thing, do we have the money? Over the past year, Housing New Zealand has developed a long-term sustainable business and funding model for state housing operations, including the renewal and expansion program I've outlined. This is largely funded by the payment of the equivalent of market rents for state housing, with budget appropriations topped up by MSD and revenue from large-scale urban land development, land sales for affordable and market housing. The Ministers of Housing and Urban Development and Finance have recently approved an increase in Housing New Zealand's external borrowing authorities from $1.05 billion to $3.05 billion to provide the finance for state housing renewal and expansion. The first tranche of new debt has recently been placed, with $500 million of medium-term bonds issued over the past few months, and we plan to issue about another $300 million in the financial year ending June 2019. Moving now to the Auckland Housing Programme. The Auckland Housing Programme was approved by the Housing New Zealand Board in 2016 and is the first regional investment plan approved by Housing New Zealand following the Canterbury earthquake-related rebuild. The programme is delivered by HLC and Housing New Zealand. Suburban scale regeneration is led by HLC, delivering build-ready land for new state housing, affordable housing and market housing, and all state housing development is led by Housing New Zealand. Housing New Zealand's Auckland Housing Programme will deliver 24,000 new homes over the years to June 2026. Large-scale regeneration is underway in Northcote, Mount Roskill South, Owareka, Oranga and Mangere, with suburban master plan and program business cases approved by the Housing New Zealand Board and endorsed by our responsible minister. Each program business case includes targets for new state housing, affordable housing, market housing and financial returns to the landowner Housing New Zealand. By way of example, Northcote, which is well underway, started with about 300 old state houses, and over 6 years this will be redeveloped by our private sector partners and Housing New Zealand into 1,200 new homes, more than 400 new state homes, and about 800 private homes, of which 50% will be affordable and in the Kiwi Build program. HNZ and HLC are working with the Kiwi Build unit and will deliver thousands of Kiwi Build homes through private sector partners to the Auckland Housing Programme, or by building directly on Housing New Zealand land, such as the McLennan development in Papakura, and this will spread to other parts of New Zealand. Our state house build program is called Innovate, Partner, Build. With strategies, plans, funds, government mandates, investment discipline, standardised designs, efficient consenting and capacities, including master planning and land development in place, Housing New Zealand is ready to take the next step, also following the lead of NZTA and developing frequent industry briefings on the pipeline of projects for residential construction and materials supply sector. Over the next 2 to 3 years, we will move to longer-term private sector partnerships and contracts with those suppliers who are willing and able to increase capacity to match the scale of the opportunity. And we will support innovation in the residential construction industry, which drives down cost, improves the quality of state homes, timeliness of delivery, and we will improve our processes to be easier to do business with. In conclusion, Housing New Zealand is primarily an investor and not a developer of residential housing. We expect state homes to be in service to state housing tenants for 60 to 70 years. We must provide homes that support dignity, stability and are great to live in well-functioning communities. We have strong ministerial support and all the machinery of government and organisational building blocks in place for this ambitious build program. We look forward to working with many of you at this conference as we confidently invest for better lives for New Zealand's most vulnerable citizens with homes we would all be proud to deliver and live in. And we might like to reflect that future Prime Ministers of New Zealand and certainly future New Zealand leaders are being raised in the state houses of New Zealand. I'm happy to take any questions, difficult ones, we go from that table.
If we could put the Slido questions up, would be great. Thank you.
So maybe, Adrienne, we could tackle a couple, perhaps, in the time we have. The one with 2 likes. Why hasn't mass-produced modular housing manufacturing taken off in New Zealand?
Well, I mean, I can sort of give an answer. I'm sure everyone in this room will actually have an answer. I think that from a practical perspective, bearing in mind, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, Housing New Zealand was actually doing 200 houses a year all over the country. As I said, it's still actually quite a bespoke territory. You have to actually industrialise the process, and that goes right from the land development through to the integrated delivery of homes. And for that, you have to actually, so you can't just start with a modular home, you've actually got to start at the beginning. There's no reason, and Housing New Zealand will be getting into modular homes. We've already got some pretty early, very interesting engagements with various parties. We've now got the scale and we've got the people at Housing New Zealand who will be able to do this. I think there needs to be a demonstration. And it won't be easy because not many folk have got the balance sheets to really get into this, and there are some consenting issues as well.
Perhaps one final question, if we can. We've covered prefab, I think. How do we avoid the past practice of price over quality of build, and also to get the right housing configuration in terms of number of bedrooms and so on, I think is the question. Looking over the next 30 years.
Yes, well, that's a really good question. I guess in terms of the right configuration, first of all, we need to think about our homes as being flexible and fungible. So some of our homes, in fact, could be appropriate for the private market, and of itself, that, you know, and some of the ways that we're reconfiguring our portfolio are actually in response to massive demographic changes. They're not things that are going to, you know, change in 5 minutes. But we do need to have a flexibility. We do need to be forward-looking, and we do need to understand that if you know, the need for social housing changes, we should change our products with it. If the housing's built well in the right places, there will be other markets for it if it's not state housing. And just going to the quality issue, we're putting a huge amount of, because we're an investor, we actually reap the reward of our practices, and we've certainly seen plenty of that. So we've had eras where our houses have been very well built, and we've also had eras where our houses have been built on the basis of price, and we've basically got a waterfall of a huge number of homes built in the 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s, all coming to the end of economic life because we didn't pay enough attention in some of those decades to quality over price.